All right, so at the risk of having everyone hear too much from me today, I do have a few items just to review real briefly. So I guess to start off, we should probably just close out the discussion on that we started in Slack about enabling the configure teams feature flag. I think just so we're all on the same page, we decided to go ahead and do that. Is that like really small and something we want to do this milestone, or if it's anything bigger than really small, I'm inclined to push it out to 13.4 just to keep the team focused on the policy editing.
It's fairly small, I think. Zamir, have you rolled out any feature flags before?
Using chatbot? No, I haven't, but yeah, it shouldn't be crazy.
Yeah, there's also I think the intention of this one was to roll out on code, flip it on code.
Okay.
But Sam, I believe is small work, and given that Arthur's waiting a lot on his merge requests, I think he would have time to do that in between. So I'll say a tentative yes.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, if it's really small and he has time, then yeah, let's go ahead and just do that at this point. Okay, so the next item is mostly just an FYI and a request. We're running a survey on our alert dashboard, and we have some good responses there, but if you are comfortable sharing on LinkedIn or Twitter, we would appreciate the extra shares just to get a few additional responses. I know I shared it on my profile. So far, it's really good stuff coming back. I've not read all of the responses yet, but the ones that I have read have been really good and informative, and hopefully it'll help us give us a base of people that we can reach out to in the future for more in-depth validation too. And then for item number C, so we're actually getting ready to do 2 solution validations. And for those of you who don't know, a solution validation is where it's a little bit more than a survey. We actually sit down and spend, usually it's about an hour with individuals, and we walk through prototypes or mocks and actually do more of like a usability study. So we, we'll have a prototype where it'll try to click through things, or we'll ask questions just to make sure that the designs are intuitive and easy to understand, and that we've overcome any of the big usability obstacles. So we're planning to do 2 of those, one for the alert dashboard, and then also another one for policy management. Just in the spirit of transparency, I wanted to make sure this group got a chance to see some of the early designs that Kyle has been putting together for us. I know our initial MVC that we talked about doesn't look anything like this. It's that list view. And currently the plan is to keep it like that. But this is a little bit more of a futuristic view down the road, where we add in status and we start rearranging the layout here to help adjust to their workflow. And the thinking is that, you've got this unreviewed state, in review, confirmed. All of those would be open states. And then you actually have 2 closed states of resolved and dismissed. And so unreviewed would be everything as it comes in fresh. They haven't looked at it yet. They'd be able to drag and drop over to the in review state while they investigate it. Once they've confirmed that it is indeed, something worth taking action for, it actually is a breach or an incident really. Then they moved it over into the confirmed state, and from there they would be able to close it out to resolve it. You could also dismiss it anywhere along this point or this workflow. The idea is that we would have something potentially that shows up on hover for some kind of like quick dismiss action potentially. As you can tell, we're still experimenting with things. One of the reasons we wanted to get this in front of the engineering team early is because everything else has really great overlap with the rest of the monitor team. So, the other alert UI that exists in GitLab, we're planning to pretty much mirror that almost exactly. But this layout and this workflow is a little bit different. I've talked with Sarah Waldner, who's the product manager for that group, and all of our use cases align up almost perfectly with, just a few minor exceptions, and most importantly, the persona between us is different. So if at all possible, it would be great if we could share the backend code, and she's even expressed an interest in adopting the same kind of workflow on her side. So if we were to make these changes, if there's a way that we could make it so that it's usable by both groups, that would be ideal. I don't know if going with the current MVC route, though, where we have more of that list view, is going to be too much throwaway work, so to speak, if we go changing the UI to this later. But I've probably talked more than enough here. I'd love to get the rest of the group's thoughts on these mocks in this direction.
I'm writing and just giving other people the chance to speak. But if nobody has anything to share, I'll verbalize.
Yeah, go ahead, Tiago.
So a couple of things. One is something we learned in vulnerability management is that we could have done a better job explaining to users how we expect them to use the features. So the high level life cycle management for vulnerabilities. The features are all there, but we haven't documented in a way, say, here's how we recommend you use this. This is how we see you using this. So I wonder if there's an opportunity to do that with alerts as well, so we don't make the same mistake. That's one point. The second point that I was just writing down is that I like the Kanban approach. It looks nice, but it is a little bit of a deviation there. And I was wondering to myself, what sort of research we've done there, and those are my two comments.
Yeah, so the research is coming, right? That's that solution validation that we're kicking off now. So we do plan to validate that before we go out and actually implement it. To come back to your first question of helping them understand the workflow that we have here, that is. Let's see if I've got another mock in here somewhere. Maybe I don't. These are Kyle's mocks, so sometimes it's hard for me to navigate them. But originally, the design was basically just, well, actually, you know what I can pull up here? Originally, the design was more similar to the workflow that is had by the monitor team, where it's just a list view, and you have a drop down by each of the rows that lets you pick the status. And that's exactly what came up, as a concern as we started to discuss this. It looks something like this, but with all five of our statuses there, is that, there's not really a definition here, and it's a little bit hard to see the logical progression of things from one state to the next to the next. So I'm hoping that this Kanban layout helps with that. As you said that, Tiago, I thought, maybe we could put just like a little, hover info icon tooltip here to help explain like the definition of the states and statuses too. Potentially even down the road as we get more towards lovable, we might want to let them customize the statuses and design their own workflow, so to speak. But we certainly want to have a solid one out of the box that's going to meet most of our users' needs. But yeah, thank you for that feedback.
My pleasure. So this is probably part of the. You mentioned it's an early design, so this is all still going through a solution validation.
Yes. Yep, we are starting to gear up to kick that off now. So it's kind of a process. Honestly, it takes a few months to get through everything, because you need to put together your prototypes, you need to put together the questions that you want to ask the users and design kind of a script. And then you have to recruit users, and then you actually meet with them, and then you synthesize the results. So that whole thing takes, roughly 2 to 3 months, but I think that's enough time that we're not going to be to this point in engineering before we can finish that solution validation.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. In that same note, talking about alerts, as we do start work there, Tiago, you might want to reach out to the engineering manager counterpart on the monitor team and see. When I had that sync up call with Sarah, it sounded like they already have an alert object. They already have tables. In fact, they have the ability to add alerts into incidents, which is where we'll want to go down the road later on. Assigning alerts or incidents to users is already there, and that was like a huge effort. They've already done a ton of work. I'm really hoping that we can just reuse the majority of their work and create a new page or a new view into that data. But that might be something, just for you to think about as we head into the alert UI work that's coming up.
It's a great suggestion, and thank you for reminding me. I'll reach out. I'll just reach out to the EM, and at some point I imagine it'll be useful for the engineers as well, Zamir and maybe Arthur, to catch up with their team on more of the details. But yeah, good idea,
for sure.
Sam.
Yeah, even if you can just use the back end, it would be very helpful already.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know everything about the architecture, but from a use case perspective, I mean, the overlap between us was probably, 95% plus. And so, there were very minor deviations here and there, but almost everything that they've built are things that we'll want. And, future things on their roadmap are also things that we want to add. So, it'll be great if we can collaborate.
Yeah, we'll do that and make sure we don't end up in a situation like we have with orchestration or configure, where there's a high degree of dependency or yeah, and we're not exactly aligned in that roadmap. We're hitting some blocks in there. So if we do jump on a collaboration with monitoring, I want to make sure that we're not going to paint ourselves in a corner.
Yeah, that sounds great. And then this last item here that I have is also more of just an FYI, but I continue to meet with customers and I continue to hear a strong ask for the ability to actively scan for vulnerabilities in production. And in that, again, the number one ask is scanning installed packages and dependencies and comparing those against a known vulnerability list. So again, I had 2 more calls last week. Both of the customers, brought that up all on their own. I think largely that's a function of the fact that we sell mostly to DevOps teams, and the vulnerabilities tends to be more of the responsibility of DevOps teams than SecOps teams. So I take it with a little bit of a grain of salt because, it's being requested by the user group of where we're at now, which means we're not necessarily developing features for the group where we want to get to. But at the same time, we kind of have to balance that. We need to address both groups. And that message is coming loud and clear from our DevOps users. So again, I know we discussed that last time, but just wanted to reiterate that this week again, since I continue to hear that feedback.
Are they familiar with Claire and the usage of Claire in our pipeline? Or
yes, but the challenge is that most customers have legacy applications that have been running in production for 2 to 3 years, maybe even more. They're a little bit embarrassed to admit how long they've been out there. And they want to get an accurate picture of the vulnerabilities as they exist today in production.
I see.
I was about to write something. I'll write it down after I ask. Sam, is there any data on the exact understanding from discussion in terms of scanning? Remember when you first mentioned, I threw out there that maybe that could mean port scanning.
Yeah, so both of the customers that I talked with this last week, it was very specific that they wanted a package vulnerability scanning. So really, as opposed to like ports or configuration, they're just looking for a basic, like, here are the installed packages and here are the known vulnerabilities in those packages. And if we can take that one step further and look at like dependencies as well, so not just the packages on the in the host or in the that you would get by like listing out from apt or yum or something like that, but like they're using npm or yarn or some other package manager like that, we can look at those dependencies as well and give a report on known vulnerabilities in those dependencies too.
Great, thank you.
So Wayne, over to you.
So I want to thank Zamir again and everybody else who helped. Arthur helped a bit as well on the demo environment for the container security demo that we're doing tomorrow. We're recording tomorrow for the customer conference. We were troubleshooting even as recently as this morning. We didn't expect it to be a dogfooding exercise of how to install and configure everything, but that's what it turned into. So we learned a lot from it, and we're excited. So good stuff.
Yeah, we have learned a lot. One item of feedback there maybe is I think we jumped on a bit too quick on the Azure support. We don't support it, and we ended up assuming we did, and that created a lot of pain for Philippe.
Absolutely, that was definitely part of it. Other learning. So the reason why we chose Azure is the user of GitLab that we're co-presenting with. That's what he does for
I know.
Azure consulting.
Nico.
Yeah, we didn't want to change that. The other is it's still harder than it should be to install and configure, which I know we're planning to address with documentation and more. And also it's not easy to learn some of the open source projects we've integrated, like the basics. So we may add some of that to our documentation as well, and I know we have some of this already planned, but things like have a base policy for network that doesn't do much of anything, but except allow you to confirm it works, kind of thing. And maybe the same for host and the same for WAF, et cetera. So we'll see. But overall, it was really neat to launch an attack, which I'm playing the persona of the attacker, and then see Philippe catch me in doing it, and then configure things to blocking mode, and no longer see my attacks be successful with an application that Nico created. And then we also did a SAS scan of it, and lo and behold, the SAS scan found the bug that Nico left in the code intentionally that allowed it. So it's kind of coming all together. So overall, good stuff.
That's great. Looking forward to see it. Keep us posted. Can we watch it live?
You can watch, yes-ish. They're not doing any of the conference live, but you can register. It's mid-August. And it's not mid. It's in a couple weeks. They're broadcasting everything live they're broadcasting all the recordings, which they're doing professionally at specific times, and then the presenters are available for chat online, and then also at that time, and then offline as well. And then I think they're going to put them on YouTube, later. But it's a free conference for everyone, which is neat. Both GitLab team members and anybody, customer or just general public. So it's a neat stuff. Looking forward to it. And thanks, actually reminds me is, I know we've got quote unquote, I don't know what we're calling it, booth duty. It's not booth duty. It's a question and answer duty. So I know I'm taking some shifts there for secure and defense. Iago, you are, Arthur, not Arthur, Alan is as well. And I think Sam, you're probably taking some of those as well to answer questions. So that'll be fun as well. So I'll add a link. If you haven't registered for the conference, please do.
Thank you.
Tiago, do you want to take Arthur's?
Yeah, sure. So the short story there is that the implementation that Arthur has put forth works, and it's well tested, but it's a pattern that the maintainers are very concerned about incorporating into the code, and that's their decision. we need to support them. So unfortunately, he will have to refactor that, and that puts the whole thing at risk because of that. The learnings we've taken from it, the maintainer has now documented the pitfall that Arthur went in, so all the front-end developers don't fall into it. And the other lesson learned is that not 100% sure on it, but maybe our iterative approach made the discussion a bit longer than otherwise, because Arthur made a big effort to split in MRs, in smaller MRs that were easy to review and easier to get through. But the consequence of that, it was that the reviewers, the maintainers, they didn't have the big picture. And it took a few cycles for them to understand where he was going with it. And then finally say, oh, I see why you've done it this way. But still at the end of the day, they went, yeah, it makes total sense why you did it this way, but it's still a bad idea because it could create a maintenance burden or a problem in the future. That was the long of it, I think.
And Zamir, it looks like you had a few things that came up too. I know you have the, I know you helped a lot with the demo with Philippe.
Yeah, and also like I did similar to what Arthur did, but in another way. I had a huge MR that has all the context, and then I start opening the small MRs with the feature. But what happens that if one person from one of the small MRs decide to kind of change the whole idea, then now you have to basically redo all the other MRs because the iteration, you lost the iteration over there because now it's another logic. So yeah, that's a learning for all of us. On
damned if you do and damned if you don't, Zamir.
Huh?
Damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we should have a chat about if there's anything we could have done better, because at the end, what I'm hearing, Sam, is that if you do the whole thing, you might get pushed back and say, hey, this is too big. Or even if you don't get that complete pushback, it might still affect the chain of MRs that you have. And if you do too small, it affects visibility and understanding on where the vision of where you're going with that. It's a tough spot. Maybe something for the iteration office hours to discuss.
And just one thing for the demo. I think one of the things that got a little bit harder was that we had a big change on the GMA v2 related to the WAF. Someone else contributed before us. It was great, but then we were not expecting to cover all those cases. And then to play out with this new interaction between V1 and V2 with this new feature that we didn't test before, it was merged recently, it kind of added a little bit of complexity there.
Yeah, so my take on all of this is, it's very understandable. I don't fault Zamir or Arthur for this. At the same time, oh, and it looks like Wayne just dropped off, but I find this very unfortunate. It kind of raises two questions. One, is our quest for an increased MR rate actually hurting our efficiency? If the purpose of getting our MR rate up is to boost efficiency, are we actually missing the mark there? And then the other thing, that I take away from this is, I find the discussion on that MR a little bit unfortunate because I feel like there's a lack of consideration of the value that we're trying to deliver to the customer. And I understand that there are good reasons to keep your code clean and free of technical debt and follow good design patterns, but could we have come up with a solution that still allowed us to deliver on time and perhaps go back and clean up some of that tech debt, even in the following iteration? Anyway, so just wanted to share my thoughts on all of this. Is again, understandable, but it seems unfortunate here as a company.
I can agree with that, Sam. It's been the question around this MR rate. I'm still getting used to it. There's value, and I know that that our CEO uses that as a to promote how well the company does in being able to get things out quickly. But I've raised in the past that this is now because the metric has become a goal. It might be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we might actually be hurting more than it's being useful. It's on the radar, and I'm sure Wayne will watch this. If not, I'll remind him.
Sounds good. I have a hard stop since I'm presenting here in the next hour. Invite you all to join. But thanks for the great discussion today.
I'll see you soon.